broadest current definition, the Gulf of Guinea stretches from Cape Las Palmas to the south of Angola in the Namib River. It thus provides a synthesis of West and Central Africa. Through its current African component, it benefits from a strategic position that links it with all the other sub-regions. It is a regional entity being upgraded geo-economically and confirmed as active area in the geo-economic divisions of the 21st century. During the 2000s, the disruption of the oil industry in Nigeria due to hostage-taking, simultaneous attacks of 3 banks in Cameroon, of a bank and the annexes of the presidency of Equatorial Guinea, as well as attacks on a grocery store in Gabon, create a psychosis of insecurity whose authors attack from the sea. To better understand the phenomenon, ECCAS, ECOWAS, the GGC and the international community are interested in this issue, especially in terms of the challenges, threats, the consequences, and finally the envisaged solutions. At the planetary level, the Gulf of Guinea is an important area for biodiversity, with ecosystems particularly favorable to bird nesting, as well as a preferred area for protected species of the fauna and the flora. The Gulf of Guinea is a large network of strategic communications routes. Recent studies show that 70% of the global population live along the coast and that 90% of trade is conducted by sea. In economic terms, the Gulf of Guinea has abundant natural resources that generate a lot of envy. Gas and oil are the most important. Oil is the natural resource that makes the Gulf of Guinea the first oil region of Africa with an estimated 100 billion barrels. The Gulf of Guinea also has fishery resources estimated at 1,055,000 tons of fish reserve and a production of about 600,000 tons per year. Fish is vital for food security and represents 41 to 64% of animal protein intake. The repeated attacks on the high seas and even inland are a constant threat in this part of the world. Thus, piracy requires, however, a redefinition in relationship with the states of the Gulf of Guinea. The diversions of tankers whose cargoes of crude oil are taken to pirate refineries are the work of a crime syndicate operating in the Gulf of Guinea. The kidnapping of oil operators for ransom is also perpetrated by fringe groups as a sign of dissatisfaction of local residents due to the misallocation of resources or because of the destruction of their natural habitat. Retaliation against the destruction of nets of artisanal fishermen by large trawlers. Over the last 3 years, there were 197 attacks on the Gulf of Guinea, including 46 in 2009, 38 in 2010, 53 in 2011, and 60 in 2012. In percentage terms, the attacks of 2012 are divided as follows: 45% in Nigeria, 25% in Togo, 8% in Côte d'Ivoire, 5% in Guinea-Bissau, 3% in Ghana, 3% in DR Congo, 3% in Congo, 3% in Benin, 2% in Sierra Leone, and 2% in Cameroon. Illegal fishing is also a major threat. It may ultimately prove to be a source of instability. Threats from illegal fishing are characterized by too much industrial fishing practiced by a large number of illegal fishermen, especially foreigners who fish uncontrollably in the Gulf. The transshipment on the high seas of fishery products that do not benefit the states. Drugs, arms, and human trafficking, which are recognized as transnational crimes. The mismanagement of the port system and the lack of modern lighting to the input channels represent a threat to the breadbasket of households, despite the subsidies of governments on certain basic foodstuffs. Drugs from Latin American countries are embarked on large industrial trawlers and transit through sub-Saharan Africa, where the state is completely absent at sea. In 2010, 18 tons of cocaine representing some $1.25 billion came directly into the countries of the Gulf of Guinea, or have transited through them before being transported to other continents. In economic terms, piracy and armed robbery at sea are behind the decline in oil revenues in many countries of the sub-region. A major crisis in this sector would have incalculable consequences for their economies and hence their political stability. Fishing accounts for about 47% of GDP in some countries of the Gulf of Guinea, which countries would not have been able to cope had the activity not benefited from emergency measures. Poor maintenance of ports and the lack of navigation channels increase the risk in shipping. In terms of the environment and biodiversity, the consequences of an oil spill in the sub-region would be incalculable. According to estimates by the United Nations Office for Drugs and Crime, about 1,000 people die per year at sea on the way to immigration. Each year, approximately between 25,000 and 84,000 Africans of the West Coast are candidates for immigration. In 2010, 170 fishing vessels in the sub-region stopped their activity for fear of attacks. In 2012, about 1,198 seamen were attacked in their business. Actions have already been taken and other solutions are possible. Politically, important reforms in the field of maritime safety and security, including 6 in particular, namely maritime governance, maritime economics, maritime defense, maritime security, maritime recovery and response, as well as maritime jurisdiction, are necessary for a comprehensive understanding of the problem. In terms of state action at sea, many coastal countries have acquired substantial naval equipment but do not invest enough in logistical support for a real presence at sea. The implementation of maritime strategies proposed by regional economic communities and adopted by states is not effective. For example, the case of the ECCAS protocol signed in 2009 in Kinshasa and the integrated maritime strategy of ECOWAS. On the economic front, a better consideration of the fisheries sector will generate employment and will contribute to the creation of a fish processing plant. Fishing can also be an important source of revenue for states and may be a factor of economic development. But the region is presently suffering from losses estimated between $828 million and $1.58 billion per year due to illegal fishing. At the level of oil business, good governance in the field of marketing of petroleum products and a better allocation of resources for the benefit of local residents, among others, could stop much piracy. The proliferation of refineries in the sub-region is also a solution to increased supply, which may contribute to a significant reduction in illegal activity. An investment in maritime safety could lead to a reduction of some taxes. At the sub-regional level, operations in Zone D resulting from the mechanism established by ECCAS have reduced pirate attacks in the area from 39 in 2011 to 2 reported attacks in 2012. Similarly, the prosperity operation in Zone E, triggered by Nigeria, Togo, and Benin, was a real success. At the international level, the US government is proposing a concept called African Partnership Station, which invites all partners to work together for the overall security of the Gulf of Guinea. Since 2010, the US finances and organizes a multi-dimensional and multinational naval exercise involving all the states of the Gulf of Guinea. The European Union has set up a special program to support the countries of the sub-region in the security of maritime routes in the Gulf of Guinea called CRIMGO. Through the integrated maritime strategy, the African Union calls for the responsibility of states in maritime policies. It encourages the establishment of an information exchange system at the regional level. In his vision, the development of Africa inevitably involves securing the sea. The United Nations, through resolutions 2018 and 2039, urges states to develop a common strategy whose key word is the pooling together of resources. Through this direct support, the United Nations shows that the security of the Gulf of Guinea is of common interest both to the region and to the entire planet. As a response to the call for the United Nations, a steering committee was established with the mission of developing a draft ECCAS, ECOWAS, GGC common strategy on maritime safety and security underpinned in the draft project of the Declaration of the Heads of State. A memorandum of understanding between ECCAS, ECOWAS, and the GGC, which will serve as a legal framework. And finally, a code of conduct as a transitional element to a binding legal text. The adoption of these three documents is the subject of the Yaoundé Summit.